Do ET contactees and abductees continue to feel the effects of their experiences in other unusual ways? Is there some kind of bleed-over effect resulting in them having other paranormal experiences, and do they become more spiritually conscious? Do some ETs have a much greater spiritual awareness and understanding of consciousness than we do? Researcher, author, and experiencer Kathleen Marden joins me once again on the show to explore these questions and more on this episode of Passion for the Paranormal. Okay, so joining me for the second time on the show tonight is Kathleen Marden. Kathleen is a researcher, author, experiencer advocate, hypnosis practitioner, and a support group facilitator. She is one of the leading UFO contact researchers of her time. Since 1990, she has researched the perplexing nature of UFOs and non-human entities via her own groundbreaking research, investigation, and experimentation. Her research has extended to archival collections and the U.S. government's involvement in the investigation of UFOs and its major studies. She is the 2013 recipient of MUFON's Researcher of the Year Award and the 2021 recipient of the International UFO Congress Lifetime Achievement Award. Her interest in UFOs and contact began in 1961 when her aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, had a close encounter and subsequent abduction in New Hampshire's mountains, a case in which she spent 15 years painstakingly investigating. She has worked on 3 comprehensive studies on nearly 5,000 experiencers. Her bestseller with nuclear physicist Stanton Friedeman is Captured: The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. She and Stanton worked together for nearly 14 years and collaborated on 2 additional books on the UFO phenomena. Her latest book is Forbidden Knowledge: A Personal Journey from Alien Abduction to Spiritual Transformation. Kathleen's essays have been published in several additional books and magazines, and she has given expert on-camera commentary on many TV shows and movies. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining me on the show tonight.
It's great to be back with you again.
Yes, it is. It's great to have you back. It's quite a resume. I'm always impressed when I read your resume and all your accomplishments and things you've been able to do over the years. It's really great. And it sounds like this new book is kind of a departure from most of your work. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is definitely a departure. I thought that I would never write this book, but here it is.
Yeah, and it sounds like you kind of get into more of your own experiences, which I think when we talked last time, we talked more about your research into abduction cases and experiencer cases. So this is more like an autobiography of your experiences and kind of your journey. So maybe talk to us a little bit about what led you to go into finally doing this and talking about your story.
Well, I thought that I would take my experiences to my grave. I did not want to have the focus on myself as an experiencer because of my many, many years as being a researcher and a scientific researcher. But then the federal government has admitted that UAPs are real. And Lou Elizondo has made a statement recently about the idea that the ETs might be taking humans in the same manner in which we take endangered species. So I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I'm glad that somebody who was an official from the government is making that kind of statement. And also, the time just seemed right. People had been asking me to tell my story, and I'm getting older. I'm getting toward the end of my career, and I think that probably the primary reason for all of this is that I've undergone a spiritual transformation as a result of these experiences, and the long, long journey of moving from just total terror and dread to being able, through the sheer force of will, to accept this, to learn about it, to learn how to communicate with these entities, and then to engage in experiments with communication.
Now, Kathleen, I believe you were a teenager when when your aunt and uncle had the abduction encounter. Now, did your experiences start well before that? Talk to us a little bit, kind of give us an idea of timeline and when this kind of started for you.
I can't say for certain if it began when I was 17 or if it began when I was 3. My first conscious, continuous memory was when I was 17, I believe. But I do know that I underwent some changes when I was 13 or 14 years old. I guess I was 14 and in the 8th grade when I had my first out-of-body experience. And that was different. And I started to fear my bedroom closet for some reason. I became fearful of the night. And that's a hint that something might be going on during the night that I'm not happy about. But my Aunt Betty was doing an experiment with a team of scientists when I was 17 years old. She had been attempting to call in craft to land on my grandparents' farm. They called it psychophysics experiments in those days, and now we call it CE5 experiments. But Betty was given a script to read. So many days into the month, so many days into the year, hours into the day, that sort of thing. Longitude, latitude, where they would like this craft to come in and either show itself or land. And in February of 1966, my aunt, mother, grandmother, brother, and a family friend and I had a kind of a close-up observation of a UFO that we had gone out to find after it came down close to my friend when she was on her way home, walking at about 9 o'clock. No, earlier than that. I guess it was winter time, so probably 7 o'clock. I was thinking it was dark. But so anyway, we got into the car. We went out looking for this craft. We picked her up. And we went down to an area near my childhood home, a lake called Country Pond. And this is in Kingston and Newton, New Hampshire. And we walked down to the beach and onto the ice. And there was the craft hovering above the ice. It lifted up and it flew to a treetop. And then it moved down through what was called Wilder's Grove toward an island, and there was a bridge that connected the grove to the island. So we went across the bridge looking for it, turned around on the island and headed back out because there was no place to turn around except for on that island where there was one house. So we got out and all of us went to one side of the bridge looking for the craft. My mother was on the other side of the bridge and she saw 2 craft hovering above the ice. And one of them projected what we now know as a carrier beam out toward her. It was coming toward her in a measured way. And she screamed, yelled for us to get over there immediately. We did when we saw what was going on. We got into the car and fled to the other side of the lake, and we went home eventually. Now, that was in February of 1966. In April of 1966, a craft came in for a landing on my grandparents' farm, and it was observed by 2 people. One of them was a commercial pilot returning home from work that night. It left physical trace evidence on the ground. It was investigated by NICAP, I believe. I know it was investigated. And my mother and I remembered finding ourselves on craft that night. We didn't report it at that time. We reported it much later. It was in the mid-1970s to Dr. James Harder, and he was the investigator for the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, the chief investigator, and very interested in UFO abductions, as they were called in those days. He had come out to work with the family, and he investigated our case. He hypnotized my mother and I think he did hypnotize some other family members too, but I can't say for certain because this was supposed to be a big secret and we never talked about it. My mother and I talked later in life. I knew that she and I knew that we had both been on craft that night. So was I taken earlier? I did exploratory hypnosis. Now, I won't do that on any client who comes to me, but I thought, well, it would be interesting to see what I say, to see if I was taken when I was younger. And I did have a very clear memory of finding myself on craft when I was about 3 years old with a little boy. And there was a gray there, and there was an older girl than I, probably 9 or 10 years old, and she looked exactly like me, only older. And this little boy and I were using just our minds to levitate a disc. And they were very excited. We were excited that we could do this, and the little girl and the gray alien were also very excited. And she was grinning from ear to ear and talking about how great this was. So I can't say for certain that it was a real memory, but it seems like it could have been, that this may have been taking place in my family for much longer than we originally thought. I know that in 1958, my mother and an aunt, not Betty, had a close encounter with a very large craft that was hovering over a field. And there were other smaller craft flying around it. They stopped the car, went to the home of some people they knew who were just across the street from this field. Those people went out and saw the craft as well. So there's been activity in my home and my neighborhood for the one I grew up in, but we were only aware of this after Betty and Barney had their experience.
You know, you've done a lot of research, Kathleen, on abduction cases. Of the research, I mean, thousands of cases. It sounds like here. How many would you say, just kind of a ballpark percentage-wise, were multi-generational, these experiencers?
When we asked the question, were other family members taken to craft? Do they have those memories? Did they talk to you about it? 60%.
That's amazing. I know you've, again, delving into all your research you've done on this, have you kind of reached or come to any, I don't want to say conclusions because you probably haven't reached that fully, but kind of theories about this multi-generational thing and why, it kind of happens that way?
Well, I've always, in recent years, thought that it had something to do with a longitudinal genetic and social research program. I know that they were extraordinarily concerned about toxins in my body. That's one of the things they told me when I was in my late teens, and I didn't think anything of it at that point in time. I couldn't figure it out. But now I know that I grew up just downstream from a Superfund site. It was about a half mile from my childhood home. And I wasn't aware. I knew that when they burned out the barrels that we had to stay inside because of the fumes in the air. I didn't know they were toxic fumes at the time. And they dumped the barrels out. It ran into the stream that fed the lake. And although they said there was no problem with the well water, when I returned as an adult to my mother's home on that street to stay with her for a while, I discovered that every child born on that street had attention deficit disorder. And some had learning disabilities as well, other learning disabilities. So it causes me to believe that it probably did affect the well water, but we were not told that.
Wow.
So that was just one thing. I know that the ETs are very concerned about our human behavior. And I think a lot of us are concerned at this point in time. They told me, and they've told other experiencers, I never repeat anything just told to me, but we had open-ended questions on these research studies we did. And the ETs said that they are most concerned because our technological growth is out of sync with our spiritual development. And as a result of this, when this happens, it could lead to behaviors that result in the destruction of all life on the planet. And they say they're attempting to prevent this from occurring. A lot of people say they're a little late, but people, I think, are trying harder now with this invasion in the Ukraine. I have seen an outpouring of people from around the world, people praying every day, people meditating every day, people speaking out about barbaric behavior. Because we all know that the use of nuclear weapons could cause an environmental disaster and kill, a lot of people and a lot of animals, destroy many, many things. And so this is a major concern.
Yeah, Kathleen, there's a lot of there were a lot of reports of UFO sightings, especially during Manhattan Project, and there's been books written about it, UFOs and nukes. Robert Hastings wrote about it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get the sense that they took a much greater interest in us when we joined the nuclear age, or when we went into the nuclear age? What's kind of your sense of that?
Well, I think that they had much more concern about us when we joined the nuclear age. And in the research that I have done in archives, I discovered that the scientists who were working on the atomic bomb noticed that whenever they detonated a bomb, the UFO showed up. And they wondered if it was some sort of artifact or result of the nuclear bomb being detonated. And it could possibly be because, as you'll read in my book, I'm not going to give a great deal of information, but there was a study done by Canadian government and US government in 1954 on communication with ETs. And what they said was that when thermonuclear weapons were detonated, it went out and caused tears in the fabric between the dimensions, and that it caused damage into other dimensions. They've also told others that coming into our dimension was extraordinarily dangerous, but that they had volunteers who did this in attempt to save not only us, but themselves as well. So that then you have to ask, are these extraterrestrials really interdimensionals from other dimensions on our planet? Or are they from other dimensions on other planets? It opens more questions than we have answers for. But I think if we look in that direction, then we have brilliant scientists who are working on this, who maybe one day will find the answers that we're looking for.
Yeah, it is quite perplexing as you kind of peel back the onion on this issue. It seems to, you can kind of keep going down the rabbit hole deeper and deeper sometimes. Not just with this, but any types of unexplained phenomena. I found, I kind of delve into just about any types of unexplained phenomena on this show. And, I'm always interested in if there's a connection as well. And I think in your new book, you're talking kind of about that bleed over into, not just this phenomena, but paranormal. I think you refer to it as the paranormal overlay.
Yes.
And it's an intriguing one. Places like Skinwalker Ranch, where there seems to be so much stuff going on. What do you kind of take from this when you say paranormal overlay? What are you kind of referring to there in the book?
Well, I have also investigated an important case in East Texas, and this was at an airport, and it had phenomena that was identical almost to what is going on at the Skinwalker Ranch. I know of other places around the United States. I don't know of many, but I know of some where there are UFOs showing up. There are highly positive entities. There are highly negative entities. A lot of people interpret them as angels and demons. And there's also light orbs, a number of different things occurring. There are, at this place in Texas, this man, and he was a pilot running the airport, small airport, and his mother were looking out the window and toward the runway, and they were expecting to see the runway, but instead, in this particular point in time, they saw a grassy field, like a grassy savanna with mammoths grazing there instead of the airport. So we're having sort of time shifts, interdimensional time shifts. There are portals that have opened, and any of a number of things appear to be coming through. I've been working with experiencers on this for a number of years now, about 12 years, since I realized that this was all part of the contact phenomena, that these portals, interdimensional portals, can remain open and other entities can come through as well. And that appears to be what is happening. And then I just recently read a book by James Lukatsky, Dr. James Lukatsky, who headed up the DIA program. And he was talking about the hitchhiker effect. And coming from the ranch in Utah, the Skinwalker Ranch, the government scientists and other investigators, researchers who were there at the ranch ended up picking up they called it a hitchhiker effect, but like an attachment that went home with them. And then they started to wake up during the night and see black shadowy figures over them. And nobody's saying it's just sleep paralysis anymore. And they ended up having balls of light, but the descriptions were not like the balls of light that most experiencers that I've worked with have seen, or that I've seen. We see like plasma balls of light, and they heal people, and they can seem to contain consciousness, ET consciousness. But these that have gone as hitchhikers, along with the hitchhikers, appear to be solid, and they burn people. They're they're not healing, they're not helpful like the others that most of us see. And so that leaves a big question mark in my mind. What could that possibly be? There's a man in Australia who I talked to, and he told me that it is from a very negative race of ETs that attach to people. I was thinking that it was lower vibrating non-human entities, not ETs coming from another planet. And he said that they vibrated at a very low level, which made sense to me, because I read that the people who had these attachments had something come over them at the ranch that made them sense terror. There was nothing going on to induce terror, but this sort of imposed terror on them. And that is the way that these lower vibrating entities, these negative entities, can attach to people. We can detach them, we can get rid of them, but you have to raise your vibrational frequency in order to do that. Their shaman can do it. The paranormal clergy can do it as well. So there are resources for people who have these things occurring in their lives. You have to raise your vibration, and it really takes a lot of mental programming. It takes a great deal of strength of mind. But if you do, if you meditate, if you listen to vibration raising music, and you do guided meditations on your chakras every day, bringing in either, it depends, if you're a religious person, such as I am, you bring in the divine. If you're not, you can just bring in the highest consciousness, because the ETs say that we all share one consciousness, and that there is the creator who is the highest consciousness. So these are the positive ETs. So if you program yourself, you can overcome those things. There are some children in the families that are now being taken. They're being kept awake all night by these negative entities. So it's really important for people to get rid of those. The man in Australia told me that just like someone who's unwanted might come into your house, don't let them stay. Just do what you need to do to get rid of them.
This is what's kind of mind-blowing about this phenomena is it's kind of like, are you dealing with these bleedovers, if you will? I'm going to call them bleedovers. Are you dealing with ET entities? Are you dealing with spiritual beings? Are they one and of the same? It just, it really kind of, again, it's kind of like I talked about that rabbit hole. This can go very deep. And it really, really does kind of make you wonder what is happening here. If it's some sort of portal that's opening up, is there multiple type of entities perhaps coming through as a result of this? It certainly does kind of it certainly does kind of blow your mind when you think about this and about this bleed over effect that's happening with people.
Yes, and Kari, I had an attachment at one time, a negative entity attachment, and I I had never had one before. I generally am, I'm a happy person. Everything has been fine in my life. And then there was one experiencer who sought me out for help. And I'm a compassionate person. He was suffering greatly. This man was a professional man, no mental illness. So this wasn't something he was imagining. But he was being taken to some kind of underground facility in tunnels where there were these highly negative draconian reptilians who were doing unspeakable things to people. And he started to tell me details about this. And when that happened, something happened to me. And I normally have some tingling in my body, sort of a highly spiritual kind of thing. And all that exited my body. It was either through my heart chakra or my solar plexus chakra. And then it was like a dark cloud just came over me. And when I went to bed that night, I uncharacteristically had difficulty falling asleep. Then it happened night after night. And I also started to ache. My body started to hurt. Well, it all makes sense knowing what I know, because these negative entities feed off negativity. They feed off pain. They feed off suffering. They feed off hatred. And so I thought, well, I really need to raise my vibrational frequency. I really need to pray. I wasn't meditating often at that point in time. I didn't know that the meditation would do that for me. What I was doing, as I have had a crucifix on my wall, I had put another one next to my bed. I was using holy water, holy oil, praying. I was doing all of those sorts of things. And then that entity, over a 2 or 3 month period, started to grow stronger and stronger. And finally, it told me that I needed to kill myself. And I said, this is going to end tonight. I had a minister coming a couple of weeks from then. She wasn't able to remove it from a distance. It was too powerful. I didn't want to wait those 2 weeks because I didn't want it to grow anymore. So I called up Kevin Briggs, who is a man who I did a secret experiment with a team of researchers. And I asked Kevin to ask his ETs to remove this from me. They told me they would protect me. I hadn't been protected. And they immediately came and removed it. It was gone when I woke up in the morning. And now I think that they're here protecting me all the time, because I very often have tingling in my crown chakra, sometimes through my whole body, but it feels very good and very loving. And I know whenever I go by a Catholic church with like the Holy Mother or something like that, I get a very strong tingling. So I wonder, what is this? Is it really ETs? Or are these angels? Are these religious figures? It's really difficult. Maybe we have all of these things occurring.
Yeah, it's kind of frightening to think about it as well, to think that you could have these experiences and have this bleed over and kind of these attachments, which begs the question. There's been a lot of reported abductions involving the Greys. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how your research has kind of bared out on this. have the majority of them, I know Richard Dolan talks about it in his newer book, Alien Agenda, I think it's his latest book, have most of have the predominantly the cases you've investigated involve grays, or has it kind of been a mixed bag?
It's been a mixed bag, but I gravitate toward the grays because I have a relationship with them. I know that there are many races of grays, and there is one race of grays that might not even be sentient beings. They work with those draconian reptilians. They're called rogue grays. That's what they're referred to as, because their behavior is different. There are other grays who have their experiments to do, their genetic material to take, that sort of thing. When people are frightened, when people are on a table and something's being done to them, they're going to think that it's negative, because fear colors our perception of what is occurring. And then people say, well, I didn't give permission. I don't want this to happen. Well, the ETs will say back to them, but you did give us permission. You gave us permission before you were born. You said that you would come here to assist us in all of this. So, you hear a lot of different things. The more you know, the more confusing it becomes. If you know very little, it's easy. It's kind of black and white. But the more you know, the more complicated it becomes. The grays who have worked with me periodically throughout my lifetime did take genetic material from me. I do not ever recall being shown a hybrid. I have memories of being taken on a tour and shown fetuses developing in some kind of like viscous fluid, I think it was, in sort of like giant test tubes, short, domed on the top, that sort of thing. So I'm aware that that program is going on. Now, in terms of their relationship with me, once that sort of program ended, and they did tell me that I have many children. Once that ended, the focus was on raising my vibrational frequency. So I would be taken to craft, I'd be on a table, and I'd feel strong tingling through my body. Back in about 1988, 1990, I became extraordinarily ill. I don't know at this point if it was a negative attachment that just ate away at me for years and left me incapacitated, or if it was something else. But I was incapacitated. I had to leave my profession. That is the reason I decided to investigate my aunt and uncle Betty and Barney Hill's abduction experience as thoroughly as I possibly could. That is when I joined the Mutual UFO Network and learned how to become an investigator of this. I had known other investigators previously that I'd met, such as Dr. Harder, Dr. Alan Hynek, Jacques Vallée. All of them had come to my childhood home. Well, in that area, I should say, Jacques Vallée was there. Jim Harder was there, but Alan Hynek I met at Dr. Benjamin Simon's home, and he was the neuropsychiatrist who worked with Betty and Barney. So I don't know. That's what I started doing. I continued to be ill. I was speaking in the field. I had books published. I was speaking in the field. I was still ill. I would speak at a conference, and I would go home and and be ill for a few days, just completely wiped out. And it wasn't working well for me. So the man in Australia that I spoke to about earlier is an experiencer who took part in my first study that I ever worked on. And he was trying to help me to overcome my negative feelings toward the Greys. And he said, I speak to them. Would you like to have an audience with one of them that I call Keek? And I thought, it sounds pretty weird, but I think I'm going to try it. I'm trying to find out what this is all about. And so over Skype, we had, I was able to meet Keek and ask questions. And we went on. And probably the third or fourth meeting that we had, I said to him, you know, I've been ill for many years. And I suspect that it was after I had a particularly bad abduction experience where I was burned, where I was terribly ill after this occurred. And will you please heal me? I can't do my work in the condition that my health is in. Well, this was a real test to see if Paul was for real and if Keek was for real. And I discovered that they were, because 4 nights later, I woke up with incredible pain in my body. In fact, I woke my husband up and I said, Charlie, I think you might have to take me to the hospital or call an ambulance. I don't know if I'm dying or what's going on here, but it was a very deep, deep pain. And he said, well, just give it a little while and let me know if you need me to take you in. So I said, okay. And the next thing I know, I was in a different environment. And I was lying on a table. There were tall, glowing entities up near my head. And maybe they were tall Greys. I don't know what they were, or if they were angels or what. But there was a screen that I was looking at. And I could see the outline of my body. It was like a picture of myself lying there without seeing my physical features. I could see like little bots traveling through the periphery of my body. They were moving. And I was feeling that strong tingling again. But 2 organs in my body were highlighted, one in mint green and one in pink. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up in the morning and I felt like I was 23 again. And I was completely cured, completely healed. I haven't had a relapse since that time. And that was way back in 2012. So it's been 10 years.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like also, Kathleen, from what you're saying, is with the fact that there's different gray ETs, different talls, maybe short, it's kind of hard to perhaps classify them a certain way. In other words, do you think maybe there's negative grays and there's positive grays, maybe with differing agendas?
Oh, absolutely. The rogue Greys are negative. I don't know enough about them. I have heard from people that the reptilians have had them imprisoned. I've heard from others that they believe that they're only like biological robots. So I'm not sure, and I don't want to go there and find out. I'll tell you that.
Me neither. I wanted to, I've had a couple other interesting guests. Well, one guest in particular, Terry Lovelace, who's, yes. I think you know Terry, yeah. Yes. And also I take from Travis Walton's story, where they've experienced human humanoid type figures while they were on craft, or very human looking, entities, if you will, or maybe they were actual hybrids. Who knows? From your research and experience, have you had a lot of other people report that, and do you have any sense of what you think may be going on here?
Yes, these human appearing ETs, we'll call them, are the second most prevalent group. They work with different groups. They might be in charge of all of this. I've worked with people, as I said, there was the little girl on the craft who was with the gray, who was really proud of me when I was 3. I've worked with other people who have had the human types on the craft, and also those mantis types. And there are different attitudes toward the mantis types too. Some say that they absolutely love them, how kind and compassionate they are, how they identify with them. They don't want to leave them. And then there are others who say that they're just extraordinarily intense. So, like Terry certainly didn't have a good experience with them. I think that he has a good perspective on it now, a great deal of insight to what was happening in his life. But the mantis types do frighten people. They don't communicate with humans in an appropriate manner. Let me put it that way. If they're trying to tell you that your body is a container for your soul, they might put the image in your mind that they're eating your body, which is not a good thing to do to a person. And and then the person will go, "Oh, no, they weren't eating me. I'm
Yeah, that's
still
not a good
here. They
visualization.
were trying to explain this to me."
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think this may sound a little bit more on the conspiratorial, lane, if you will. But I think it's led some to wonder whether or not, because of these reports of, these uniforms that looked military-like, humanoid, basically just look human, that were on the craft with these other ETs, whether or not there could be some sort of government involvement with this stuff going on. And so, at least, people have asked the question whether or not there could be some complicity with our government working with these ETs.
Yeah, I really don't know. That's not what I specialize in. Melinda Leslie is a person who has had MILAB experiences and does a lot of talking about that, but I don't want to get involved in investigating the military. So I stay away from that. There's enough for me to investigate regarding human types. And there was a big case I worked on in North Carolina. MUFON investigated it first. I haven't done a MUFON investigation in years because of the way I investigate. It's different. MUFON is more of a processing mill where you do one after another. If I'm doing an investigation, it's lengthy and it's long term, and it has to be really important. But in this case, there were 3 individuals who were taken. And that night, 2 of them actually were paranormal researchers with a tremendous reputation in that field. Stanton Friedeman, nuclear physicist with whom I worked for 14 years, introduced me to them. He had met them at a conference. He was very impressed by their level of physics, of knowledge of physics, and the way they presented it. So they wanted to do some experiments with an experiencer of contact. And so I set them up with one in North Carolina who was a verified experiencer. They set up all their equipment. They're out at night with him. And he says, look up there toward the moon. It looks like a craft is coming in. And they're looking. They have a video camera set up in another part of the yard. They're holding a ghost box in one hand and a camera in the other, all recording equipment, a bunch of equipment in their hands. And so they're looking at it, they're asking questions, and the next thing they know, they're no longer holding that equipment in their hands. They find it under a bush nearby. They're standing up, just reeling back and forth, feeling nauseated and wondering what happened. They picked everything up. They took it into the house, and the experiencer's wife was in there. And she said, where have you been? I've been looking for you. And they said, oh, we're just out there in the yard. And she said, no, you weren't. I was out looking for you. You were not there. Do you know what time it is? Well, it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and they were missing about 2 hours time. So I did my own investigation. I just interviewed the man. I still have to go up there, but COVID has stood in the way. And both women separately came in, and I did hypnosis with each of them separately. And one interacted with the human types. They told her that they had lived on this planet many thousands of years ago, and that we had an environmental collapse. And now they are coming back. They had found another planet. It wasn't as nice as Earth. It was mostly in twilight. And now they come back from time and time just to check up on us. They don't take anything from us, but they check up on our development to see how we're doing. And the other had a relationship with these Mantis types. That's who she was with on the craft. And it's in my book. No, it's not. I can't remember which book it's in, if it's in a book I wrote. But anyway,
you've written many, so.
The remarkable thing about this experience is they were able to capture video of the abduction in progress.
Wow.
And I was able to do a frame-by-frame analysis on this. Only a few frames because the camera shut down. But which is not unusual. Usually it shuts down before you can even capture anything on video. But what I saw on that was a non-human entity sitting on the ground, head down, arms and legs crossed. Then it appeared to be wearing some kind of a pack on its back, but then it lifted up into the air, and you could see it was some kind of a chair, and its feet were resting back on this chair. And it was holding an indigo colored light in one hand and a white light in the other. And it just glided along, and it was just turning its head back and forth and moving the lights back and forth as it was gliding, looking for the people that they were going to take. And then I have another frame of a mantis sitting in a tree. And you can see the shape of its head, the triangular shape, and the almost mitten-like hands. And then there was another entity that was, I believe, dropping off this beam. This is a carrier beam, and I think it's interdimensional because it appears that she was small when she was dropping off this beam. And as she floated down toward the surface, you could see she had a wand. She was wearing a dress of sorts, and she had very large feet with little pointed things on the ends of the shoes that she was wearing. Just extraordinary video. And I was really pleased to, it gave me some more information. And that's what I do all of this for, is I'm on a search, like any mad scientist might be, for the information. To
Yes.
know, hopefully before I'm gone, what on earth is going on here?
Yes, the Holy Grail. We're all searching for it, right? We may come
Yes.
from different starting points. I kind of come into it from paranormal investigating starting point, but I've always kind of followed the UFO subject kind of quietly for many years. I want to shift gears just a little bit here. Going back to your research into the alien abduction phenomena, and many years of research, what do you think is the very best, aside from the video you talked about, the very best physical evidence of this occurring?
Well, I think that Betty and Barney had more physical evidence than anyone. And I have continued to attempt to entice scientists to do further tests, laboratory tests, as our technology has developed. And in my 60th anniversary edition of Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, I've updated the book. And I have all of the new evidence in there, but I can tell you one thing that has already been on television. Ben Hansen and I were up at the University of New Hampshire library, archival library, where I had set up the Betty and Barney Hill archival collection. And so we had Betty's dress on camera. We turned it inside out. We were examining it when we discovered marks in the area of her navel. Well, we checked out the lining of the dress. It was torn from waist to hemline on that side. We checked out the lining of the dress, and it only was on the lining. It did not go through onto the dress material. So that meant she couldn't have spilled something on it. So what else could it be? Well, Ben was an FBI investigator and in a former lifetime, and he said it looked like blood to him. So we thought, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's submit that for a DNA analysis. I had a disc of Betty's blood. And so I sent that, and I sent the sample that I cut to a laboratory. And it was analyzed, and both what I knew was her blood on the disc and also the sample from the lining of the dress were too old to be able to determine that it was blood. But it was definitely Betty's DNA in that fluid. And what that points to is the possibility that it is physical evidence regarding Betty's needle in the navel examination, where they inserted a very large needle into her navel, causing a great deal of pain. So it was long before we had developed amniocentesis, long before we were using it in a hospital setting. And lo and behold, maybe that's what they did with her.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, that discovery. I know we're getting a little bit short on time, but I feel remiss if I didn't ask because you cover it in the new book. You talk about the Council of Eight.
Mhm.
How did you come to know about this first? And then the second part of my question is, what have you learned about them and what has been their message?
This was a scientific study by a group of researchers that we thought we would never speak of. It was just going to be highly confidential. Two researchers that I work with, Dr. Melanie Barton-Bragg, who is a psychotherapist and a minister, and Denise Stoner, with whom I have worked for many, many years from MUFON. And I decided that we would be willing to participate in this study that Kevin Briggs invited us to do. Well, we did a little bit of exploration early on, especially me. I was extraordinarily scientific when I began this, and I thought, is this man mentally ill? He says that he has telepathic conversation with entities. I'd already been healed by one back in 2012, but this was a different matter. So was he delusional? Was he hoaxing, putting something over on us? Well, I found out that he had been a police officer in the UK. So that gave him a little bit of credibility to me. Also, that his wife was a college professor and researcher at that university in the UK. They moved here and became American citizens more than 20 years ago. And he was as perplexed as we were, because he told us that he had first been visited by these tall human type ETs when he was 8 years old. They materialized in front of him when he was in the bath. And he was terrified. They finally left. And then a year later, one of them came back as a conscious orb and stayed behind his curtain for a week and taught him about consciousness and taught him how to astral travel. And so it was interesting. He had a missing time event when he was a 15-year-old paper boy. And I did hypnosis on him for that. And so I thought, well, I guess I would like to communicate with these ETs. What we discovered is that this council of ETs introduced themselves to us. We couldn't see them, but we could feel their presence. They had a very strong electrical signature, you might say, electromagnetic tingling through our bodies again, that is just so prevalent, so familiar to experiencers. We also measured an increase in the room temperature. For the fifth and sixth dimensional entities, it was more than 5 degrees. For the two ninth dimensional entities, it was more than 8 degrees, about 8.5 degrees. So we knew that, this was going on, that there was some evidence that this was real. And then they wanted to show each of us craft. They showed Melanie craft, and they communicated with her, one of them. Same with Denise. And then it was my turn. And the little gray scientist had come to me in a dream, but I don't think of dreams as being reality. But, it was just something that happened. But then, when my husband and I were driving in his truck to go to Disney World to see our grandson perform, and from the Boston Children's Choral Group, this ET came for a ride with me, and I could feel him, and we actually did have communication. I asked him questions. Was he dead or was he alive? Was he a ghost? I was asking funeral type questions, and if they buried their dead the way we did, that was where I was coming from at that time. But he did come to me when he was going to show me a craft, and I didn't see a craft. I did see about a 40-foot circle in the lake where the water was just churning, and I'd never seen that before. And it might have been from his very strong energy signature. Not sure about that, but it was very interesting. They taught us about consciousness. They taught us about dimensions. They taught us about God. They taught us about the ninth dimensionals who no longer have bodies, and about the fifth and sixth dimensionals who claim that they are from other planets and do have physical bodies, but they're just in a different dimension than us. So we don't see them. They tell us as we raise our vibration, we will be able to eventually see them. We have seen shadows of them, of the one of the ninth dimensionals. Now they tell us that since they don't have bodies in the ninth dimension, that we perceive them as we think we're going to see them. But Melanie, Denise, and I all saw one of these ninth dimensionals as an angel. We saw like angel wings. So they taught us that we can create negative entities with our minds. That if we are the types of humans who are going to be terribly hateful, negative, saying bad things about other people, wishing ill will on others, that we can create these negative entities from thought. That's one of the things that I try to convey to everybody. We asked 120 questions and received answers that I put in the book. So very precise information, I thought, and very informative. So just as my last message to everyone, if you have negative entities or if you want to raise that vibration, you can go to my website at Kathleen-Marden.com and go to my essays on contact. There are 2 essays there on negative entities. One of them tells you how to raise your vibrational frequency, what you need to do to protect yourself and raise your vibrational frequency. Anyone can do that. I do it every day. It's just a meditation to raise your vibration. So, and also, please send love into the collective consciousness, because we need a lot of love out there. There's a lot of negativity as the result of wars, as the result of the pandemic that we've had there. And it would really help if everybody on this planet would just send love to meditate, to pray, whatever is you're comfortable with, to raise that vibrational frequency toward a higher spiritual realm.
Yeah, interesting stuff, Kathleen. I wanted to share the screen here for a minute so we could display what the cover of the book looks like. And there it is, Forbidden Knowledge, a personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. Kathleen, can people get your book on the website? Do they have to go to Amazon? How do they get it?
You can purchase autographed copies from my website using PayPal, or you can get it in a paperback book or an ebook through Amazon.
Okay, great. just one more thing, Kathleen, as we finish up, we wrap up here. Any speaking engagements or anything you have on the horizon, events you're going to be attending that people can see you?
Absolutely. You can go to my website and get the specific information in the links. But I'll be next month in north of Pittsburgh at the Butler Ghost Conference. Then after that, in the next month, May, I'll be in McMinnville, Oregon at the McMinnville's UFO Festival. From there, Roswell over the 4th of July, a week later in Denver for the MUFON Symposium, in Exeter, New Hampshire on Labor Day weekend. And 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm going to be in Michigan. I don't have that posted yet.
Okay, great. Well, it sounds like you're busy
Yes.
attending events. I really want to attend the Roswell one. I'm hoping I can get there this year. If I do, hopefully I'll get a chance to say hello. I appreciate you spending the time with me for the second time. It's been a fascinating discussion. Really looking forward to getting into the book a little bit more, reading more about your story and your journey through this. It's sounds like quite a fascinating journey you've went on. So once again, thank you for talking with me, Kathleen. And I know it's late, you're East Coast. So have a great what's left of the rest of your night. We're having a big snowstorm here, so probably
Good
gonna
luck with
wake up
that.
to maybe 4 or 5 inches of snow in the morning, but we're kind of welcoming it here, given that we've not had enough snow this year. So, but once again, thank you, and again, have a great night.
You too, Curry. It was nice to speak with you again. Take care.
All right.